Thanks so much for your company. I am Pius Kojo Baka. To our very first story, government will spend about 119.621 billion cedis on compensation and interest payments in 2024. According to the 2024 Citizens Budget by the Finance Ministry, this will represent 52.7% of the expected total expenditure of about 226.68 billion cedis. More in this report.
The expenditure from these two main items is lower than what was recorded in 2023. The about 39.58 billion CD grants to other government establishments is the third largest expenditure for this year. It is followed by capital expenditure of 28.72 billion CDs. Other expenditures constitutes 27.69 billion CDs, whilst goods and services make up 11.06 billion CDs. The total expenditure for this year constitutes 21.6% of the size of the economy. Primary expenditure, which is expenditure without interest payments, is projected at about 170.7 billion CDs, approximately 16.2% of the size of the economy. Meanwhile, based on the estimates for total revenue and grants and total expenditure, the projected overall balance on a commitment basis is a deficit of 50.1 billion CDs.
More on the economy this time round on the IMF, because Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta has indicated that the deal reached with the external bilateral creditors should mark a major turning point for the economy. This was after the country managed to reach an agreement with its bilateral creditors last Friday on the terms for restructuring $5.4 billion of debts. Now, speaking on the yet-to-be-aired PM Express Business Edition, Mr. Ofori-Atta said this deal will help fast-track the process to reduce Ghana's debt.
We went through a very difficult and sacrificial exercise with the debt exchange program. So there's no question in people's minds that Ghana has done its part, in very difficult environments. And therefore it's incumbent for people to come to a certain realization that we also signal a new beginning for how international architecture should begin to look at countries such as ours. And the goodwill that the government and the country has built over these years, I think maybe you should attest to it. Of course, colleagues at the ministry work incredibly hard to make sure that we'll fulfill, the review issues. And Parliament was very generous with us this year in terms of passing the revenue bills and also the appropriation in good time, which the President assented to on the 29th of December. So I think it's been a collective effort. And a clarity on the goal, and therefore, of course, there are quite a number of people invested in this thing not happening, but making sure that the work that needs to be done is done. And I think it's really an acknowledgement to all of us as a country that we are thought of differently, and therefore when people sit, they need to consider the Ghana case in a special way.
Talk about this deal being reached with the external creditors. I mean, we've heard about no haircut principal interest, about paying something after 5 years. What is in this deal for Ghana going forward now that we've reached this agreement with these external bilateral creditors?
So you're talking about the Eurobonds, etc.
For the bilateral creditors, in terms of the deal that you have reached with them, what is Ghana given to get these guys on board?
Well, first of all, there was actually quite a bit of a miracle. And as you know, the cutoff date has always been sort of March 2020. This was really extended to 2022 December, which is just great. So everybody can now be a part of this, and we can get into bilateral negotiations with each one. I think it gives us some leeway the next 3 years with regards to servicing of the loans that we have, and that gives us space for our own fiscal space to be able to insist on the type of development that we want. What we have now is it gives enough financial assurance for the IMF to sit. We now are going to take our time to get into the nitty-gritties of the MOU. And so that's what is ahead of us. But at least the major hurdle of them realizing a holistic term sheet to us has been achieved. And we'll now work with them into the details of that.
So does the preliminary term sheet include the cut on the principal and the interest, and then the fact that it's still a freeze after 4 years before we start paying something as well?
I think those broad parameters, are in there, and I really don't want to be drawn into the details because those are really going to change. But what it does give us is it gives us momentum to now proceed a lot more aggressively with our Eurobond investors and commercial creditors. So from Monday, we'll have a team that is now going to begin those discussions.
So now it means that you are ready to go to the board, because the IMF had always argued that what they were looking for was that financial insurance. Now that this has been reached, are you ready to go to the board? And is it now the 19th of January that the board...
That's correct.
All right, so that's Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta in that engagement with my colleague George Yafe on PM Express Business Edition, which is this Thursday. Do make a date and watch. Now, let's go on Zoom and engage the Greater Accra Regional Chairman of the AGI, Chiona Mapelu, for more on that. Thanks so much, sir, for joining me on Business Live. First of all, for industry, how do you receive this news of Ghana getting close to receiving the funds?
Hello, Pius.
Chonam, can you hear me? All right, so we are making frantic efforts to engage Chiona Mapelu.
Good evening.
All right.
Well, I can hear you now. Good evening, and good evening to your cherished listeners. So I'll begin by saying that generally it's a good news it's a welcome news for us in industry, because what it means is that once we're expecting, then there's a general sense of confidence, and it signals, a boost in business confidence among the business fraternity. So generally, it's a good news, and we're happy that we've come this far. Even though it's a good news, we would caution that we'll be very cautious in the way we are optimistic about it. I mean, let's see the money come. The real results for private sector is that once there's an expectation of stability, or there's an expectation of hard currency flowing into the economy, we would expect that it would help the currency stabilize, at least for a period, which is what we need in our planning stage. We are at that stage, beginning of the year, that we are planning for the rest of the year for our businesses. We import about 70% of all raw materials that we use in our factories. And once you need to import, then you need hard currency. So you're concerned about the fluctuation of the currency. And so that if you have assurance that it will be stabilized for some time, it's easier for you to plan. And also that you can also plan for the prices that we're going to be pulling out for the goods and services we produce. So generally, it's a welcome news. And we only pray that more stringent measures will be taken to ensure that we don't have to always wait for an inflow of an IMF facility for us to be expecting a more stabilized economy. We have to get to that stage where the economy will systemically be stabilized for businesses to flourish.
And I guess that must be complemented with right policies, isn't it?
Exactly. So we're looking forward for policies that promote domestication, policies that allow foreign private business, Ghanaian-owned businesses to thrive. You want to see a situation where there's an equity law that protects businesses, or that ensures that every business in the country would have a local participation. That way, all the monies, or most of the monies, will be retained in the Ghanaian economy. or will be clawed back to expand businesses. You observe that every year, the cycle is such that by January, February, most of the foreign-owned businesses will be cashing out their money out of the economy. They'll be cashing out their profit out of the economy. That puts a lot of pressure on the dollar because they need to change and get hard currency to be able to send out of the economy. And so that destabilizes not only the currency, but the economy in general. But if you were to have a policy that ensures that there's an equity law and encourages local citizens to be part of companies and establishments in the country and actually own shares, what will mean is that we will be able to retain all these monies in the economy and actually work hard to export and have the monies come to the economy so that over time we'll have a more stabilized regime rather than waiting for an IMF bailout.
And Chairman, I guess ultimately you are looking forward to seeing these developments affect other macro indicators such as inflation, interest rates, etc. And of course, looking forward to that policy rate announcement, right?
Exactly, because the good thing is that the inflation rate has been there's an improvement in the inflation rate, but we'd like to see a more deeper inflation. Ideally, we look forward for single-digit inflation rates. Normally, it's better that way, so that you can be sure that prices are generally more stable, and that helps us in our overall industrial planning. And so, of course, the IMF bailout will come handy, hopefully to deepen this, and also for the central bank to consider to reduce its policy rate because it has been inflation targeting focus. And so really, if this comes, all of these indicators hopefully will be affected in a good way so that overall the industrial environment in Ghana will flourish.
Greater Courage, not Chairman of the Association of Ghana Industries, John Amafelu, we are indeed grateful for your time here on Business Live. Still on the back of this, partner Deloitte Ghana Yao Latte is optimistic the International Monetary Fund program, when completed, will create fiscal space which will ensure adequate investments across the real sectors. Now, Ghana will start receiving or servicing its debts after the 4-year moratorium. Now, payment will, however, commence after 5 years. According to Mr. Latte, if the country's debt is properly restructured, this will impact positively on interest rates.
It's positive from where I sit. If you recall, one of the reasons why it was quite difficult to go to the international capital market was that our risk had gone up. So whilst the external credit agencies were downgrading us, the cost of credit that was going to be available to Ghana was going to be high. So we are borrowing at about 9% roughly. And so if you go to market and you're borrowing at 15% on Euro bonds of 1 billion, 2 billion, that's quite significant. So for me, if you are going to be structured and then interest commitment is going to go significantly below the 8%, average 8 to 9%, and coming to about 3% thereabouts, that margin alone gives us a lot of savings for us to use and put into other uses. So the reason for going to an IMF program and similar program, debt restructuring that we are going through now, is to create fiscal space, because we need money for other things. We need money to support the productive sector of the economy. So once we get that fiscal space from this debt restructuring process and IMF program, we will use the money for other productive sectors of the economy.
Away from the IMF and its related stories, the African Prosperity Network, in collaboration with the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, is set to organize the Africa Prosperity Dialogues in Ghana from 25th to 27th of January 2024. The meeting will offer top business leaders, heads of international development institutions, and social change makers a unique opportunity to deliberate and proffer comprehensive policies aimed at boosting intra-Africa trade. Addressing the media ahead of the 3-day conference, founder and executive chairman of the Africa Prosperity Network, Gabi Asario-Tredakon, said the event will map up strategic, systematic, action-oriented economic ecosystem that leads to real prosperity on the continent.
We had the first one in January 2023. The focus then was how we if you like, elevate AFCFTA from ambition to action. And the compact which was put together by our partners led by Dr. Eugene Owusu, with the UNDP, ECA, and the rest of them, and the AFCFTA. The compact that came out of the end of the 3-day retreat was presented to the AU, and they adopted it. And what is important about that is that the AU recognizes that the conversations that take place at the Africa Prosperity Dialogues between business leaders and political leaders is relevant to pushing the FCFTA agenda. Okay, so let's not be, let it not be lost on us in terms of the importance of the conversations that we are having here. Fortunately for us, we fall between Davos and the AU summit. The next AU summit, it's, I believe, February 17 to 18. Our conversation is 25th to 27th of January. And whatever comes out of here, the compact, it will be tabled at the next AU summit. And we hope that there will be actionable things that will come out of this year's dialogues.
You're still watching Business Live here on the Joy News channel with me, Pius Kojo-Baka. We are pausing for a breather. We'll be right back with more. Hello, welcome back to Business Live. Crude prices rose on an escalation of geopolitical risks in the Middle East after the US and its allies launched airstrikes against Houthi rebels in Yemen, retaliating for attacks on commercial ships in the Red Sea. This has tendency to affect supply to the African market, especially pump prices in Ghana in the medium term.
Last week, President Biden said airstrikes have been conducted against a number of targets in Yemen for attacking ships in the Red Sea. In response, the Houthis said all US and UK shipping interests are now legitimate targets for attacks. Crude prices fell back from their best levels after a recovery in the dollar sparked long liquidation in energy futures. The increased number of hostile incidents in the Red Sea against commercial shipping is bullish for oil prices. The Houthis started attacking the ships in the Red Sea in mid-November in support of Hamas in the Israeli-Hamas war and said they won't stop the attacks until Israel ends its assault on Gaza. Attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea by Iran-backed Houthi rebels have forced shippers to divert shipment around the southern tip of Africa instead of going through the Red Sea, disrupting global crude oil supplies. Crude oil prices have support from tighter global crude supplies after Libya's National Oil Corporation on Sunday declared force majeure at its Sahara oil field that was shut down last Wednesday after protesters entered the facility. The Sahara oil field is Libya's largest and pumps about 300,000 barrels per day. An increase in crude in floating storage is bearish for prices. Monday's weekly data from Vortexa showed that the amount of crude oil held worldwide on tankers that have been stationary for at least a week fell by negative 2.1% week by week.
Let's interrogate this further as we've been joined on Zoom by research analyst with IES Adam Yakubu on the impact of the surge in crude prices on the domestic market. Mr. Yakubu, thanks so much for joining me on Business Live. Now, the crude market has responded to the geopolitical tension between the US and Yemen by an increase in the commodity by way of pricing on the international market. Now, what's going to be the immediate impact of this, basically, when it comes to supply to Africa?
Yes, good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your listeners. You know, as we all know, and as the simple law of demand and supply would indicate, that whenever we have either the cost of supply going up or a shortage in supply, what is naturally going to happen is that prices are going to inch up. And what has happened in Yemen and what is happening within the Red Sea area is that tensions are rising, and so people are projecting that there could be a likelihood of supply disruptions within the area that can affect the global supply chain of crude oil, eventually pushing prices up. Even though for now prices are trying to recover below the $80 barrel, which is currently somewhere around $74 at the close of trade on Friday. prices have not inched up fully, but there's that trend that we are seeing that prices could go up further, given that this decision by the US and its allies to continue airstrikes, which would disrupt activities within the Middle East area, which is a strategic location for the global supply chain of crude oil. Yes.
All right, so Adam, help me contextualize this. What's going to be the impact here domestically?
Yes, so if you would see, we just put out our projection for the second pricing window for January, and we are saying that we are expecting prices on the domestic fuels market to go up between 1% and 4% for all petroleum product prices, because when
Rather unfortunate, Adam Yakubu's line has frozen, and we are making an effort to get him back on stream to speak to us on the subject matter. But we've got to take this story before we go to Adam. Now, Executive Chairman of the Fair Sky Group, Eric Sedi Kotoche, has underscored his company's commitment to providing the youth in Ghana with sustainable income. According to him, despite the economic challenges faced by most businesses in the year 2023, the company recorded unprecedented growth. He was speaking at the 21st anniversary and Thanksgiving service of the group. So before we take this story, I'm told Adam is back on to complete his point. So Adam, you were making a point for us. Conclude that for me.
So I was saying that prices are likely to go up between 1% and 4% for all petroleum product prices, because when you look at the data from refined products market, you will see that all petroleum products went up, ranging from 2% for petrol, about 3% for diesel, and about 4% for LPG. However, the interesting thing is that the Ghana cedi in recent times has been on the depreciation trend, went up, appreciating against the US dollar by some 0.66%. Ordinarily, we would have expected that prices would come down because the cedi is appreciating. However, when you compare the margin of increment on the refined product prices against the margin of appreciation of the Ghana cedi, it's not enough to offset the margin of increment, for which reason we are going to see prices still go up as a result of these activities from the international market, largely driven by what is happening in Hamas and Yemen.
And I would like to take you back to the international scene where Angola, which we know is Africa's second largest crude producer out of OPEC Plus. Now, is Africa's place in the big prize game still valuable, you would say? Adam, are you on?
Yes, I can hear you now. Your network froze, so I couldn't get to your point.
All right, so I was making a point or asking you to help us understand the impact Angola's exit from OPEC would have on the continent. Do we still have a chance?
Yes, at the time Angola is exiting OPEC, a number of opportunities have come up from both the upstream and downstream sector in Africa. When you take West Africa, for instance, Dangote Oil, we are told would start commercial operations from January this year onwards. Also here in Ghana, we have Sentio Oil, which is also going to start its commercial production within the first quarter. And so Angola's exit, yes, would affect OPEC, but also look at it from the basket, the whole basket of OPEC. How much does Angola contribute to the basket when it comes to their international production? So the major players there, we all know, and the major decision makers at OPEC, we know, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and the likes are those who mostly drive the decisions at OPEC. And so, yes, Angola's decision to exit would affect OPEC, but since the major players still hold some of the major decisions they hold, we might not really feel their exit, but I'm sure it is an internal country measure that the country might want to re-strategize or reposition itself when it comes to their crude oil security and their energy security policies, which is intended to bring economic development to the country. So yes, Angola's exit is imminent, and but I don't see it having much impact on OPEC's major decisions going forward.
All right. Thank you very much, Adam Yakubu, for your time. He is a research analyst with the Institute of Energy Security there. All right. So that's how we part company here on Business Live. I am Pius Kojo Baka. For more stories, do log on to myjoyonline.com/business. See you same time tomorrow. Bye.